Welcome. You are listening to Haunted Histories on Paranormal UK Radio. And hello and welcome to this episode of Haunted Histories. Now, what's everyone been up to? You know, you can find me on Paranormal UK Radio. This is where you find me exclusively every 2 weeks. And if you want to listen to any of the other episodes, they're all stored here as well. But it's still a bit of a weird time, isn't it? Still a bit of a weird time. In the UK, we're on lockdown, but people don't seem to be taken as much notice of it as before. The kids are still at school, which, as I keep saying, I'm very thankful for that because it's keeping them occupied, and I'm not a teacher. I wouldn't want to be trying to teach them again. The teachers do a much far better job of it than I ever could. But one of the things it does mean is that I'm at home a lot more. So I'm getting through my workload, my day job, a lot quicker, and it means that I can do more research on things and write more blogs. And, I finished the manuscript for my most recent book. So you'll be hearing all about that in the next couple of months when it gets ready for launch. But one of the beauties of doing things like Haunted Histories here on Paranormal UK Radio and doing my blogs and doing my writing and writing for the brilliant Haunted magazine is I get to meet some amazing people. And really, it's international. Anyone who thinks the paranormal isn't international, open your eyes, because it is. And although we sometimes have language problems talking to people in countries that don't maybe have English or a form of English as their first language, it is still international. One of the people I got to meet, it was earlier this year, we first got to really chat when we were doing the wonderful Courtney and Rock's Paracon. And we got to do there was an interview with her and I and a couple of other people. It was the wonderful Mrs. Spook Eats herself, Amanda Woomer-Limpert. Did I pronounce that right, Amanda?
Yes, you did.
And you're talking to me all the way from
Buffalo, New York.
Can you do a proper New York, like proper? Like we hear like Joey from Friends.
Oh gosh, like from like Long Island, you're from New York.
That's the one. I love it. See, that's what we think of over here is New York.
Yeah. Interestingly, my entire family on my mom's side is from New York, like New York City. So we do have that accent in our family, and every so often I slip into it, and it's awful. It's a terrible accent. I'm just going to say.
It's fantastic. I love it when I watch things like Law and Order, SVU, and they're going full on New York, and it's like, that's New York. That's what I want to hear if I ever go there.
You say it's an interesting accent for sure. Yeah.
I love it. I love the American accents. I really do. But Spook Eats, and I called you Mrs. Spook Eats, but that is your thing, isn't it? Spook Eats.
Yes.
What is Spook Eats?
So Spook Eats is basically a travel website or blog that we travel when we can. We travel the country, usually in the States, but I was over in the UK last year in August and September. But we travel around and we visit haunted restaurants, bars, and hotels where we try the food, we tell the ghost stories, and we search for spirits of all kinds. Very punny. It was something that I came up with several years ago. a while ago because I love traveling, I love the paranormal, and I love history, and I love to eat and drink. So it was kind of this idea in my head thinking, we should create this travel just like a kind of like a list or a travel guide of places that people can go if they're visiting a certain city or a certain town and they're looking for some place to go and eat. Instead of eating at some chain restaurant, why not go to a place that's just rich with great food, great history, and great ghost stories? And you might have, an interesting paranormal experience, much more than, going to your run-of-the-mill chain restaurant that is a dime a dozen and super boring. So that's Spook Eats, kind of in a nutshell, the abridged version. And it's been an absolute blast. I've loved finding this little niche in the paranormal and kind of just running with it. Whenever people hear about it, they're like, that's such a good idea. Why has no one done it? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm glad that I can kind of be the one to fill that role.
I think it's great. I mean, it's kind of my thing with Haunted Histories is to combine the history and the paranormal, and it always astounds me that not more people are doing it, and or in the way that I sort of do it. Because to me, it's like you're saying about going to some of these places and combining good food with your hobby. It's a no-brainer, isn't it? It's why had no one else ever thought of it?
Yeah, and hauntings and history go hand in hand. You cannot have a ghost story without looking at the history of a location. So it seems like a no-brainer. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some people think it can. They make up the history, which is kind of where Haunted Histories came from, because I got so fed up with reading histories that were not really history. They were someone's experiences that they'd rewritten as being fact, and there was no historical bias in it whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that's where I sort of came from. But how long have you been doing Spookies, and what was your first location?
So I officially started Spook Eats back in 2018, but I started visiting locations for it in 2016, and I started kind of like building up my kind of like repertoire of locations before officially launching the website of Spook Eats. So I'm going on only 2 years now, officially with Spook Eats. But, my first location that I went to was actually the Stanley Hotel out in Colorado.
Yeah.
Probably one of the more famous locations I've managed to get to.
Yeah.
And it was, I was definitely in over my head. I will admit that. Just because it was my very first location. I had been, investigating on my own for years. I started paranormal investigating in 2004. So I had been doing that up until at that point, but it was definitely more of like a hobby for me. And I wasn't really taking it too seriously. I was respectful and I was curious about things, but it wasn't kind of my name attached to it. It wasn't kind of a business venture that I was kind of starting out on. So I would like to return to the Stanley Hotel to kind of do a more mature version of my visit. Just because it's such a huge location. There's so much to see and do in the area and at the hotel. I think there's like 3 restaurants there. I didn't get to spend the night. I would have loved to have actually like stayed in one of the rooms. So I'm hoping once I'm allowed to leave my house again, that I would be able to get back out there because it was absolutely gorgeous. I'm a big Stephen King fan. Of course, you can't mention the Stanley Hotel without mentioning Stephen King. I'm just going to admit it. So to be able to get back out there would be fantastic. Unfortunately, I have a huge spooky bucket list. So it'll, have to go to the bottom and like work its way back up to the top slowly over time.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I need to get a flying license so I can fly around the world to go to all the places I want to go to because I really can't afford the airfares for all.
Yeah, right.
But you're also, again, like me, you're also a writer. You've got 4 books out.
My 5th one just came out a few weeks ago. Yes. So very excited.
So we've got Haunted Atlas of New York, America's Haunted Breweries.
Yep.
The Ghosts of the Ghostlight Theatre, which we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yes.
The Cryptid ABC book, which is good for kids, but adults will enjoy it as well.
Yes.
So what's the fifth?
The fifth one is Krampus's Great Big Book of Yuletide Monsters. Also a kid's book, but adults can enjoy it too. So I have those two picture books, and I call them creepy books for creepy kids. So that just came out about a week or two ago.
I did not know that. I am very sorry. I will go.
No, that's okay.
I'm going to slap my researcher in the mirror in a second. You see, I did a search. I did a search on Amazon to check all your books, and those are the 4 that came up. I'm very disappointed in myself. God.
No, it's a new development. It only just got published.
Okay. But yeah, so you also write for Haunted Magazine, which is another place that we kind of met through.
Yes.
And you're a great supporter of Haunted Magazine, which I think everyone should be, because it is.
How can you not be?
Exactly. I mean, it is one of a kind, that magazine, and Paul and Andy, the 2 guys who basically run it, are so supportive of, what would you say, new talent?
Yeah, new talent, like always looking for fresh, I don't want to say fresh new faces, but yeah, I it's the amount of work that they put into it and the amount of love and passion that they have. It's infectious. Yeah. And I think everyone who's involved, whether you're a longtime writer that, is a part of every single issue, or if you're, new and considering writing for them, they're so passionate about it that you can't help but feel that same passion.
Yeah. You become part of the family.
It's true. Like, here I am all the way across the ocean, and I feel like part of the family. They sent a gift for baby Spook Eats when he was born.
It was lovely.
It was so sweet, and when I was over there in the UK last year, I got to meet up with Paul. So it was just, it feels like you're a part of the family, whether you live down the street or you live halfway around the world.
And meeting Paul didn't put you off, Amanda?
No, not at all.
You know the British kind of, we have to be rude to each other. It's kind of, it's like whenever Paul knows that I'm interviewing someone, he says, will you actually let them speak? And it's like, you cheeky sod, you're the one that doesn't stop talking when we it's just, you've got to tease each other. So you've written your books, you write for the magazine, you've also got your blogs on your website. Congratulations on your nominations for Higgy Pop, by the way.
Oh, thank you. You too.
Thank you very much. But the one that we're going to really be talking about tonight is the Ghostlight Theatre. Now, I must admit, even though I was a bit of a thespian when I was at school, I kind of, after I left school at 18, I didn't really follow up. And even though I loved it, my kind of, I suppose, spotlight thing is that I do a lot of presenting for my day job. Obviously, I do the podcast, I do videos, all that kind of thing. But I haven't been back on stage as an actor since I left school. But I never actually knew what a ghostlight was.
Oh.
Researching for this show. Would you like to explain to people what a ghostlight is?
I would love to, because lots of people don't know what a ghostlight is. They always think that, it must be a haunted theater because it's called the Ghostlight. And we're like, well, yeah, it's because every good theater has a good ghost story, but, there's more
than one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So a ghostlight is found in most theaters, if not all theaters. And basically, it is a light that is always kept on when the theater is dark. So if there's a show not going on, or right now during a pandemic, and the theater is dark, the theater will leave a ghost light on. And there's 2 reasons why. Theater people are a superstitious lot. So, of course, we have all these different reasons why. So the first reason is to kind of appease the spirits and to keep them away. So it's sort of a protection thing. You kind of like when you're a little kid and you have a nightlight to keep the boogeyman away. Same idea. The more happy idea is that while the theater is empty and dark and you leave the ghost light on, it gives the ghosts a chance to perform on stage themselves and kind of entertain themselves while people are away. But almost every theater, at least every theater that I know of, does have a ghost light. And the Ghostlight Theater just decided to take their ghost light, which they have their ghost light, and it's their name. So it's kind of this cool little theater trivia tidbit, but also a little historical fact that they worked into their name. And most people don't realize why it's called the Ghostlight Theatre.
No, I didn't until I started looking up what a ghostlight was. And I was like, oh, never knew that.
Yeah.
But then I found out that a lot of the theatres in the UK, because obviously they've been shut down,
Yeah.
they are making a point of saying, if our ghostlight is on, we will be reopening. And you know, so that they're making a point of saying that if the ghostlight is on, it will be reopening. And I think that's quite a nice sort of way of associating it as well, that it means it's just asleep for a while. It doesn't mean
exactly
it's gone. But yeah, so it's called the Ghostlight Theatre. Now, reading the book on it, which I would stress to everyone, you can download it, you can get a hard copy, whichever you want to do. The proceeds are actually going towards this theatre, because this isn't like a massive chain of theatres that subsidise each other when things are going, because you're being affected by the pandemic over in New York State as well, aren't you? I mean,
oh yes.
How many? A lot of businesses still shut. Are people still being told not to go out?
We reopened back in like September and early October, but with like certain parameters, like be smart. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, people have not been smart about it. There was a lot of Halloween parties. There's a lot of football is on TV now. American football is on TV now. People are getting together inside to watch football games. Mm-hmm. So there's been a huge spike, and we actually just went from like a green lit zone, which is totally fine, to yellow to orange within like a week. And we might go back into red sometime next week before Thanksgiving. So it's definitely getting worse. And theaters especially were never able to reopen. We had different phases in New York, where it was phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Mm-hmm. And like restaurants were able to open, then, you know, gyms were able to open, and then movie theaters, but not live theaters. So they've been completely shut down since March. So it's definitely it's been a struggle for every live theater in the area. Yeah.
Yeah, no, any kind of live performer, musicians, theatres, and what people don't always realise, it's not just the actors who are up on stage, because the support crew in a lot of theatres, it's the same number as the actors, isn't it? Where you're looking at people who I mean, not so much maybe in theatres where it's a team of people alternate who does what job, which I think is what I was reading about yours. But when you get other theatres, excuse me, even independent ones that are part of a bigger, you know, we're talking about the West End or something in London, you've got the people who work on the front desk, you've got the people who work on the doors, you've got the people in makeup, you've got the people in costume, you've got the lighting technicians, the sound technicians. They're all out of work as well.
Yeah.
And it's a really sort of it's heartbreaking that some of these may have to close and be repurposed, because they just can't keep going with no income. So the proceeds from this book that goes to the Ghostlight Theatre are going towards the theatre to help it keep running. It's one of the endeavours that the supporters are doing. So do get a copy of it if you can. Obviously everyone's wallets are a bit sparse at the moment, but you know, it's well worth getting if this is the kind of thing you're interested in reading about. But the theatre itself, you've got a real strong family connection to it, haven't you?
Yes. I've been a member with my entire family since 2005. So I just came to the realization a few days ago that that's half my life. I've been a member of the Ghostlight Theatre. My parents have been a member. My brother was a member. So there's definitely a very, very strong connection that my family has with the theater, which I think is why I'm fighting so hard to try to find ways to keep it running. Mm-hmm. You know, they can't put on productions right now. Like, okay, that's fine. We can't do plays. What else can we do? Let's release a book. You know, and the response has been great, you know, within, you know, several weeks of us releasing it, over 100 copies were sold. So that's, you know, over $1,000 that we were able to give right back to the theater to help them continue to stay, at least, you know, keep the lights on and stuff, during this time. So I'm very, very attached to this building. I'm very attached to the family that owns it. They're like a second family to me. So it's the desperation to try to keep it open. I feel it just as much as they do.
Yeah. Is that Don Swartz?
Yes. Yes. Very good.
Yeah. See, I do research. I may have missed the book thing, but I do actually do some research. But so you've got this strong family connection. Now, anyone listening carefully might have heard Amanda say her brother was a member. Now, I'm going to get this is going to sound quite callous, and it's not meant to. I'm going to get this over and done with. Now, you lost your brother 5 years ago?
Yes, 2015.
Cancer. Was it leukemia?
It was called synovial sarcoma. It was a form of pediatric cancer.
Right. And that's another thing that Amanda and I found, ironically, we had in common. We both lost a sibling at a young age, which isn't that common, or it's not that common, thankfully, for a lot of people who never have to go through it. But I always find it's good to talk to somebody who kind of knows that feeling of losing a sibling. So when we're talking about Jed, who honestly, I've seen the pictures you put up of him. He was gorgeous.
I know.
Hubba, what a gorgeous young man. And you can tell him that next time you bump into him at the theatre.
Yes.
About the fact he keeps loitering, doesn't he?
Yes.
So those of you who are listening to that's what Amanda meant by her brother was a member. It's not that he's not a member anymore. In fact, if anything, I think he still is. But we're going to come to that. So the theatre itself is in a place called North Tonawanda. Why do I have to pronounce some of these? Some of the names I have to pronounce at the moment. Oh, blimey. Tonawanda. And the actual, I looked up what it meant, and it means swift running water.
Yes, we have lots of fun names around here. We have Tonawanda, Cheektowaga, Gowanda. Yeah, they're all fun. Skajakwada. Yeah.
No, it's what?
Skajakwada.
Wow.
Yes, it took me years to figure out how to pronounce that one.
I mean, we have enough in the UK that I know when friends from America and Canada come over, they look at me and go, how do you pronounce that? Why don't you use all the letters? Well, you just don't. You just miss some of them off. It's just the way it is. But yeah, there are some brilliant names. And a lot of them do have Native American.
Yes, yeah, almost all of them around here are Native American.
Yeah, so Tonawanda, it means swift running water, and it was the Seneca tribe the word comes from, which I thought was quite nice. I quite like looking into that sort of thing. And as a region, Tonawanda was a lumber region. Obviously, you're right next to sort of Niagara and stuff, and there aren't.
Yes, so Niagara Falls is about 10 minutes away from us.
Yeah, so most people will know Niagara. I've been to Niagara. I went Maid of the Mist. Yes.
Oh, yes, I know Maid of the Mist very well.
I was 8 years old. And
oh, my gosh.
My one memory of Niagara, let's say at 8 years old, was going, where is it? Where is it? And my dad going, listen. And you just start to you can't see it, but you hear the roar. And then when you see it, it is breathtaking, I have to say, but it's the roar that you hear before you even see the water. It's pretty mind-blowing, I wouldn't want to have been thrown off there as a sacrifice, which they're fun, aren't they? Hence the Maid of the Mist. So Tonawanda is meant to have been separated into North Tonawanda and Tonawanda, and it had quite a strong German population, I believe. Am I right so far? Yeah?
Yes, you are. You're nailing it.
Okay, cool. And one in basically with the Erie Canal being built, it separated them, and from what I understand, the German population who were now in North Tonawanda didn't really have a church that they could use. So they decided to build their own. And they built and I'm not going to try it in German because I can't. Yeah. Can you speak German?
I do, but I actually it was my minor in college, but for whatever reason, every time I try to pronounce the church's name in German, I'm awful. I can't do it. So
the Deutsche Verenigte, it means German United Evangelical Peace Congregation. If you want to look it up in German, it's on the internet.
Yeah, right.
That's really bad, isn't it? I'm not even going to try.
We call it the Frieden's Church for
Frieden's, Germained. I can pronounce a few of them, but my limit in German is asking for a couple of beers.
Yeah, right. That's important.
Exactly, and I can count to 10, which is normally impresses people. But so they build this church, whatever you want to call it, in 1889, and for 111 years, it's a chapel, and probably the centre of the German sort of population for that part of the world. Do we know why it's shut?
Basically, they just decided to move. They were moving to a new location. I think that the congregation had grown smaller, so they didn't have a need for such a large building. So they decided to move. They actually, at first, just moved down the street. Right. Since then, they've moved again, but they were just down the road, and that's when they offered the building to, Don Swartz for $1.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. I wouldn't mind that kind of deal.
Right?
It'd make an amazing house.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So if you look at a picture of this place, if you get a copy of the book, there's loads of amazing pictures in there. And Amanda's put in pictures of what it was in, I think it was about 1930 as a chapel inside, and what it looks like now as a theatre. And you can actually see how it is a natural theatre. And I think a lot of churches are, because of the build of them. At the end of the day, the person who's doing the preaching or whatever, and I'm trying not to sound anti-religion here, but it is like they're on a stage. They are talking to their audience, which is in effect what an actor does. And I don't know if you know this, but there's in Norwich, where I grew up, there was saying that we had enough churches that you could visit a different one each week. So 2 churches. And obviously, as people stopped going to church, a lot of them had to be repurposed. And there are a couple that are actually theatres themselves.
It's perfect.
Actual really old stone churches. So it is I think it's quite a natural progression. But obviously with theatres and possibly churches, I don't know which one causes the most, we get paranormal activity. Now, the first thing I want to ask you about is something called the Peanut Gallery. What is it? Why is it called that? Did it exist when it was a chapel? And what's happened up there?
So the Peanut Gallery is a section of the theater. It's actually in most theaters. The term itself dates back to kind of the vaudeville era, where those were kind of the cheap seats, usually at the back of the theater, maybe standing room only. And it was always the really rowdy, loud people coming in off the streets. And so in our theater, we have a small section that is slightly elevated or slightly inclined, and we call that the Peanut Gallery. It's only about 4 rows, so it's a very small section, but in my opinion, it is the best seat in the house because you can actually see the whole stage and no one's head is in your way because you're elevated. It's very nice. So we call it the Peanut Gallery, more so just because it's small and it's to the back of the building. But it's one of the most active places in the building. And I don't know, because basically the setup of the building is you have the main auditorium and then you have the balcony. And the Peanut Gallery is situated underneath the balcony, and the stairs down into the basement are kind of between the Peanut Gallery. So it's kind of like you're sandwiched between 2 of the hot spots in the theater of sorts. The balcony is very, very haunted and the basement is very haunted. So it's kind of like this area is almost like a crossroads for the balcony and the basement, I feel at least. And people have seen full-bodied apparitions kind of walking through. They've seen figures sitting in chairs, kind of looking at the stage during rehearsals or after auditions. We've caught photographs of a figure standing back next to the Peanut Gallery. So it's surprisingly a small section that's just kind of like jam-packed with just people coming and going. They're just people that happen to be from either 100 years ago or 50 years ago or 5 years ago. And that's the thing thing I really love about Ghostlight is that, we know of at least 5 spirits there. And we're investigating more now during lockdown. We're actually going in and trying to investigate and get names and dates from the spirits there. And it's cool to me because some of the spirits that we've come into contact with are from the 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other spirits there that they're people that were members of the theater company that have passed away within the last 4 or 5 years. So it's this amazing kind of mixing of old world and new world. Yeah. And, whenever we host investigations there, we always say, like, please be respectful, because these are people that lived and died here. And we personally know some of them, which I think just kind of adds to the power of the location, because you're going in and the spirits there and that they know you too. So it's this really interesting relationship between the members of the theater company and the spirits that are haunting it.
Yeah, definitely. So the peanut gallery, that wouldn't have been there when it was a chapel, but the balcony would have been?
I'm not sure if the peanut gallery itself, unfortunately, all of the photos of the church are taken from the back of the building, right, forward towards the altar. So if the peanut gallery would have been there, it would have been where they were taking the photograph, or they were standing in it or sitting in it. So unfortunately, we don't really know if it was there, but that space, that location was there. Mm-hmm. So I would think that it's a great space to have people sit back there. So I would imagine it would have been there back, when it was at church.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned the balcony is another active one.
Yes. So the balcony is where the choir sat up there. We know that for a fact. That's in the church records. The choir would sit up there. There was also a gorgeous pipe organ up there. And since then, we've actually repurposed the pipe organ to be the light and sound booth for our tech crew, which is really cool. It's the whole facade of the organ is still there. And we've donated the pipes to a local church. So those are gone. But the pipe organ shell, I guess, is still there. And it's just a really interesting location. I've had a bunch of experiences up there. A lot of people think that a man is up there. Mm-hmm. And we get the vibe that he might be the choir master. Mm-hmm. Just because of different EVPs we've caught over the years and just people's kind of intuition of sorts. Yeah. We've had one of our tech crew members has heard his name called by a woman when he's completely alone in the building. When I've been there on several occasions, the first time I heard it was in the spring of 2006. And as recent as just last spring, I hear a man laughing in my ear during a show. Usually it's during the spring comedies, which kind of makes sense, but it's always at a moment that's not funny. Like when no one else in the building is laughing, I hear this man's laughter always in my right ear, kind of behind me. And it's never scary. I don't think that there's anything malicious in the building. So many times people are like, oh, it's a demon. I don't think there's anything like that there. There have been several instances of kind of feeling like you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and you need to back away. But other than that, I've been in the building by myself. I know many people who have been there by themselves, and, it's an old building. So there's kind of like that, a little bit of that creep factor where like you hear creaks and stuff, but then you think, okay, it's 130 years old, it's going to make these noises. But back to the balcony, one of the biggest claims that we have in the whole building in general is the lady in red. And she has been seen many times up in the balcony, usually by cast members on stage during performances. They will look out and see her up in the balcony, which is probably the worst thing imaginable. You're trying to remember your lines or, your cues, and you get distracted by the lady in red up in the balcony. So the balcony is kind of one of those places where we've never really caught any photographs or anything, but it's a lot of people hearing things and seeing things with their own two eyes. And then attached to the balcony is the spiral staircase, which is, at least in my opinion, and I think in most people's opinions, it's the number one kind of hotspot haunted location in the entire building.
You're looking at my list of things I was going to ask you, aren't you? You've just gone through without me even having to tell you.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. I mean, what I was thinking of with you saying you hear the laughter and it's not necessarily at a funny point. Maybe that goes some way to say when people say that spirits don't have time in the same way that we do. So maybe it's something that was funny 10 minutes beforehand, but it's kind of like a delay effect that the spirit has only just heard it finish, or he or she, I guess it could be a woman with a manly laugh, is laughing at something that is about to happen that they've already seen happen in their time space, if you like. But you have either that, or I was going to say, if you were actually singing at the time up there and he was laughing in your ear, I'd probably turn around and punch him.
I was gonna say that's like an interesting concept, because you always have like those conversations, like, they're not on the same wavelength as us with with timing. And I actually I've never thought of it that way, but that makes perfect sense. I've had conversations like that with other people. So the fact that I'd be like, oh, why am I hearing laughter right now? Like, that does make kind of perfect sense, because I've only ever heard the laughter up there during their spring comedies. So it's not just during it's the Christmas show or their fall thriller and there's random laughter in my ear. It is always during the comedies, which makes sense if they are kind of watching the show and experiencing it. They just might be either ahead or a bit delayed.
Behind. Yeah. That it's always, it was just something I was thinking it, but you're welcome. You can take that.
But take it and run with it.
You can take it and just give me a little bit of credit if you mention it to somebody else.
Okay.
The thing I was thinking of about the singing side was one of the stories I think it was Don had in your book, that he was part of they were singing, and he was saying that someone who's directed quite a lot of musicals or put on quite a lot of musicals, he said there's different types of singers. There's the one who just mimes because they know they can't sing. There's the one who sings quite quietly and does it to get along, just so that, and there's the ones that think they're great and sing really loudly, and then there's the ones that are actually really good and have to be told to sing up. And it was a story, he was saying that they were doing something and they were all going, wow, this sounds really great, this sounds really great, and then they realised there's other voices that weren't theirs joining in. I don't know if you remember that account in the book.
Yes.
I read it today, actually, and it was like, wow, that's very cool. It's like supernatural harmonies. I mean, that's amazing. I was chuckling at his definition of the 4 types of singers, wondering if one of them I fit into.
I know. Me too. I'm like, oh gosh, what am I?
Yeah. If I get over there, I might have to meet him and do some singing, and he can tell me which one I fit into. But because I quite enjoy singing. But I thought that was a really interesting one, that they afterwards realised there was extra voices joining in that wasn't part of their sort of mini choir, and the fact that it was a church, that people would have sung and been very proud to sing as well. I thought that was a really interesting. I'm wondering if the choir master was conducting, his choir to join in and harmonise with them.
Absolutely. And we've had other people that have experienced seeing when the building is dark, seeing a man kind of pacing back and forth up in the balcony as if he's the choir master. But I've scolded Don since then, because I was not at that investigation, because that's when I was at the Stanley Hotel. Mm-hmm. And I was so upset because they didn't record it.
Oh.
And I'm like, guys,
mistake.
I know. I was like, this is an experiment you guys are doing. You're doing this to see if anything will happen. You have to record it. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, there is no, quantitative evidence that this happened other than the accounts of Don. I believe my mother was actually at that investigation, and several other members of the theater company who have kind of backed up his story. But if they had just hit record on even their phone, just record it so we can hear it. It just breaks my heart.
Something I've learned over the years is always have a recorder going, even when you're not actually really doing anything. It means you've got hours to listen back to just in case, but you never know when you're going to have things always happen when you're not. Spirits don't seem to wait for you to go, right, record.
Yeah.
And then do something. You've got to have it going. I think it was Richard Estep who got me doing it. You've got to have a recorder going as much as
constantly,
possible, because you just never know. But I do have to ask, if your mum was part of that singing group, which of the categories does she fit into?
So I like to think that she is good, but needs to be told to be louder.
One of them.
She is a singer. She's a harmonizer though. But she is always really good at kind of leading people into singing. Because I think like whenever you're told to sing as a group, people are kind of like really tentative and nobody really wants to take the lead. Yeah. And she's good at taking the lead. So I think she's a very good singer.
Good. That's a nice daughter thing to say.
Yes. No.
But this lady in red, I mean, that's even on the internet. If you Google the theatre, the lady in red comes up, and what was fascinating was there was so many accounts of her in your book, and even though some of them said it was a burgundy dress, or she had dark red hair, or she had auburn hair, there were so many similarities of accounts that it does make me wonder who she is, and it would be amazing to find out.
It's amazing because there are people who saw her back in 2004, 2005 when they first got the building. And then there's people as recently as their last Christmas show they did back in 2019. So she's everywhere. People are constantly seeing her. You have people who are longtime members seeing her, people who are novices and only have just joined, people that don't communicate with each other at all. That describe her the same way, which I just think is absolutely fascinating. We just recently hosted a members only ghost hunt, I'll say. It wasn't quite an investigation. It was a ghost hunt, just kind of for fun. It was a fundraiser for the theater. We did that, I think it was only last week. It was Friday the 13th. And we started doing a spirit box session. We did the Estes method, and the name Rachel came through. And I got so excited because I thought this could be the lady in red. We don't know her name. We don't know who she is. Maybe this is her. So we kept talking and stuff with the Estes method. And unfortunately, when we asked if you're the lady in red, she immediately replied no. So we were disappointed with that one. But that just means as we went through the rest of the night, we continued to talk to Rachel, and learned more about her, how she worked with children, she worked with music. So we kind of have added another spirit to the mix, whether or not she's a permanent resident of the Ghostlight or just kind of passing through that night in particular. We're not sure yet. But I was so hopeful that we had finally gotten her name, because she's the star. She's the shining star of the ghosts of the Ghostlight Theatre. And we don't know anything about her.
Has Don ever written a play called The Lady in Red?
No, but he should. I hope he listens to this. And
you'll have to send him the link to it and tell him I want to write a play called The Lady in Red to work as a trigger to see if she'll come and appear.
That would be amazing. Like, he's written so many plays. He should write a play about his ghost at the Ghostlight.
Exactly. Right?
Come on, Don.
Exactly. Almost a Phillips type experiment. Come trigger, come. Yeah, definitely.
It'd be very interesting. That would be an interesting experiment to see if it would stir anything up.
And you'd have fun as well by doing a play that he'd written.
Yes. Oof.
Come on, Don. Come on.
Yes, do it.
Do it, Don. Do it. You don't know me, Don, but I'll be on the phone. So we've got Ghostwise, we've got Lady in Red, we've got the Choir Master, we've got Rachel. You said there was 5.
As I'm going through, there's 3 others that we know of. Okay. So that would be 6. My math is not the best, apparently. So we also have a little girl that is down in the basement. She always appears down in the basement. And it's interesting because the two times that people have seen her have been two very different people. One is kind of an older, gruff, no-nonsense electrician, and the other is a tattooed kind of hippie guy. They don't talk to each other at all. But they both saw a little girl in a blue dress with pigtails. And at the time, Don, his daughter, one of his daughters, was obsessed with wearing her hair in pigtails. It was always in pigtails. Mm-hmm. So they just assumed that it was her. And both times after they saw her, they would go to another part of the building and immediately see Don's daughter. And like, she wouldn't be in a blue dress, obviously. And they would ask her like, oh, were you just down in the basement? And she would say, no, I've, been up here talking to so-and-so, or I was doing my homework. And people would back her up with her story. So only in hindsight did they realize that they actually saw something possibly otherworldly. And, a paranormal group came through back in 2008, I believe, and they got, in an EVP session, they got the name Mary. And so we've kind of combined the name Mary with the little girl. We have used, dowsing rods and different, it's kind of like a REM pod, but it's called a deco pod. Someone in Buffalo has designs it and builds it. It actually works better than a REM pod, in my opinion.
Oh, that's fighting talk there.
No, I will say, I'm going to stand by this. I'm not a REM pod fan. I've never actually seen them work outside of TV.
Oh, okay.
I that's just me. Maybe I'm like a bad luck charm when it comes to a REM pod. I've never seen them work. But the deco pod, it does work. It works really well. So I bought myself a deco pod, not a REM pod.
Hey, whatever works for you, whatever works.
Yeah. We've interacted with Mary multiple times, and we do think that she is the little girl down in the basement. So that's ghost number 4. And then we have 2, former members of the Ghostlight Theatre Company. One is a gentleman named Carl. He passed away in, I believe, 2017. If my math is right. Again, my math is wishy-washy, so I could be wrong. But Carl was a member for years and years and years. I grew up knowing him. A lot of students in North Tonawanda had him as a teacher. And he passed away. And after he passed away, people did see him on stage. They did a Christmas show called All Through the Night. It's a Don Swartz original. It's an absolutely amazing story. Very, very special to the Ghostlight and very near and dear to our hearts. And the first time they did it after he passed away, I believe it was actually the year that he passed away. Mm-hmm. That people were backstage watching the monitor, and they saw a tall, bald man leaning up against the wall next to the Christmas tree on stage. And they kind of went through their brain, who the heck is in the cast? And they went through everyone in the cast, and there was no one bald with glasses, like that. So they actually took a closer look, and they were like, that's Carl. And again, if I had been there, I would have whipped out my phone and taken a picture of this monitor, but nobody did that. Which just kills me. But people many, many times have come into contact with Carl. They've gotten EVPs with his voice. So that's kind of heartwarming, knowing that someone who was almost a founding member of the Ghostlight Theater is still at least popping in from time to time, if not kind of always watching over this building that he so loved. I mean, he was kind of like a staple of the Ghostlight Theater. So it's been very, very heartwarming hearing people's accounts of experiencing who they think is Carl, which I love, because I think people always think of ghosts as kind of like dusty old Victorian ghosts. And, at the Ghostlight, we've come to realize that, all different types of spirits are there. Some are kind of that Victorian era, but others are, from 2015, 2017.
So these spirits that we've talked about so far, and I think I know who the number 6 is going to be. But,
yes.
Yeah. Are they residual, or are they actually spirits? They're interactive?
So I believe that the choir master is residual, totally residual. because basically people see him pacing back and forth. We also think that he's the spirit in the spiral staircase.
Right.
And basically anytime a blonde lady, usually blondes bring it out, they sit in the spiral staircase like clockwork, you hear him start coming down the stairs.
You know what the hair is, right?
What are you, Blondie?
Yeah.
Gotta come on down. but these women, my mother was the first one to experience this, and since then about half a dozen other women have either intentionally sought this out or they've accidentally realized this. But they would sit in the spiral staircase at like the bottom of the steps, and you can actually hear the footsteps coming down. And my mom described it as even like the gravel underneath like a boot or something. She heard that. And she said, of course, it sent her flying out the spiral staircase and screaming, she said she looked like a cartoon character. She was so scared. But I think that's totally residual, that it's just kind of like you do the right thing, certain things align, and he just starts coming down the stairs.
And it's the trigger switch. It switches the reenactment, if like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything else, Mary, Rachel, possibly I need to do more research on Rachel. The lady in red, all seem intelligent. They're all in different places. If you ask, especially Mary, if you ask her, with the pod, to, light it up blue or light it up green, like she does it just on command. So they're really good at interacting with you and answering your questions.
Yeah.
But I do think the choir master is definitely residual, whereas the other ones I think are more intelligent and they interact with you. They might like tug on your costume or, mess with the electronics up in the balcony and different things like that. So it's fun to have a mixture.
Maybe the one you hear laughing then isn't the choir master.
Because that's true. I just thought, as I was saying, that was like, that wouldn't make sense if it's residual. Right. And so
maybe that was the organ player, or it's actually one of the priests or something who would go up there to talk to the choir master about what they were going to be doing. Or maybe you've got a seventh.
That's very possible, because there are some people who do say that they do sense male presence that's more a bit foreboding, for lack of a better word. Again, I don't want to say like malicious or nasty, just because I don't like to think that there's anything really negative there, but it could just be the sort of thing where like, you're in my space, I want you out, sort of thing. So he could be number 7.
So it's someone who has more of a sense of gravitas, because it's their building, it's their their sort of congregation.
It could be a priest or a pastor.
Yeah. So we've mentioned the spiral staircase. I do want to sit on it because I won't be running. I didn't. When I was doing an investigation recently for the book that will be coming out in the new year. I was having anything happen in the hallway I was sitting in, and I decided to play the sound of a school bell, like an old-fashioned school bell, to indicating the end of lessons. And straight behind me, I got footsteps as I was sitting. It's middle.
Oh my gosh!
And I'm sitting there on this wooden corridor, and I heard come behind.
Oh.
And I just turned around and I went, "Oh, hello then," but then nothing happened. But I heard it, and I got it on my recorder as well.
Oh, that's great.
This sound of footsteps. So it takes a lot for me to run from. So yeah, I'd probably just shove to one side and say, "Come on past then," and then I'd be like, "What have I just done?" But you mentioned the spiral staircase, you mentioned the basement, and the little girl. I know I read some accounts in the book of people just feeling a sense of, is the basement where the props and everything are stored, or is that somewhere else?
Nope, that's down in the basement also.
But people feeling a sense of, I shouldn't be down here.
Yes.
Do you think that is just because basements have that kind of image as being where a serial killer loiters and where people are murdered and everything? Or is there genuinely, or could there be energies attached to the old props even?
That's something that I have brought up, both with the props and the costumes, because they have a huge costume room that's filled with thousands of pieces that there could potentially be things attached to that. What I think, the one story in particular about kind of that, I shouldn't be here, that feeling of foreboding, was down in the basement. And it was actually Don's brother that experienced it. And it was shortly after they got the building. So it was probably early 2001. And talking to Don about it, he thinks, and I agree with him, that it was a sort of thing where they were newcomers. The spirits that were there probably had no idea who the heck are these people? Where's my congregation? Where are my people?
Yeah.
So here's this new guy walking in. He was like checking the sump pump or something like that down in the basement. And, you know, you're coming into my space. I don't know who you are. I want you to go, and I want you to go now. That was one of the only times anyone's experienced something so heavy like that actually kind of forced them to turn around and leave. So, you know, I think it's more so that, you know, the spirits or whoever that was didn't recognize them. They didn't know who they were, and they felt threatened in a way. So they tried to kind of scare them away. And they succeeded. It worked. Since then, it's been almost 20 years now since they've had this building and they've been there. You know, Don's been there almost every single day for 20 years. So I think now the spirits are familiar with many of us. They're comfortable with us. And because of that feeling of heaviness or kind of like that threatening nature that someone felt very early on hasn't been felt in years. Because I think that they are used to us now, and they realize, like, we're here to stay. We're here to take care of your building. We love it just as much as the church members. And, you know, we're here with you. We hear you. We acknowledge you, and we respect you, and we want you to stay if you would like to stay here. And I think that is the big difference between then and now, because I don't sense anything negative there. But there are some stories from their early days of definitely a negative feeling, especially down in the basement.
Well, that could also have been to do with the changing around of the internal of the moving things around. If there was, it was like, hang on, no, the pews were meant to go there, the altar's meant to go there, and everything's being pulled out for a stage to go in and seating. That might have upset them a bit as well, until they realise, well, actually, this is quite a nice use. I quite like this. These are people, they love, you know, they have a passion. But the last spirit, and I saved him to last, is the gorgeous Jed. If anyone if anyone thinks I'm just being nice for nice sake, honestly, go and have a look at a picture of him. This young man was,
he was gorgeous, and I hated him for it. No,
yeah, because you're really ugly, Amanda. I mean, let's not give over. You're beautiful as well, but your brother's smile. I mean, I defy anyone not to have smiled if he smiled at them. That smile. But he actually did us a favour last night, didn't he?
Yes, he did. So cool.
Do you think he knows I was thinking about how good looking he was, and he thought, right, I'm going to put in a show just to make me smile?
I sure hope so, because he was a charmer.
Was he? Oh, okay. Okay.
So sorry.
All right. I'm just picturing your brother. I just, you know, tall, good looking, gorgeous smile, actor. I mean, yeah, I'm just picturing him. Yeah, anyway, it sounds really bad seeing as he was quite a bit younger than me, but but anyway, that aside, what did he do last night?
So basically, right now, we are putting together a production for Christmas. Obviously, it's not going to be performed live because of COVID, but we're filming it like a movie, and then we're going to be streaming it online for people to be able to watch. And this is a play that Don wrote himself, and it was inspired by Jed. Jed was basically like another son to him. Jed was, he was probably 9 years old when we joined the theater. He was best friends with all of Don's kids, and he was basically their fifth child. And so when he passed away, it was devastating. It was a devastating blow, not just to us, but to their family as well. They lost a son and a brother. And Don has been working on this play for 4 years now. And we're finally, this was the year that we were going to put it on, and then COVID hit. So we definitely still wanted to, put this production together, and he wanted myself and my parents to be a part of it, because it's not only inspired by him, but different characters are, kind of bits and pieces of him worked in. So at the end of rehearsal, we were finishing up the final scene, and in that scene, I am kind of off stage a little bit, in a closet of sorts that, on the set. And I was helping to stack a table and several chairs for the other cast members. And at the time, everyone else is still on stage. And while I was back there, I heard someone say my name, Amanda, 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 several times, probably like 4 or 5 times. And at first I thought, like, is that my mom? So like I kind of stopped and I looked to the side, to kind of like the backstage area, and no one was there. And I kind of walked around a little bit. And it was at that point I realized, I was like, everyone is still on stage. Like, I'm the only one off stage right now. So at first I didn't really think anything of it. But after a minute or two, I was like, that was Jed's voice. That was Jed's voice. And it was the sort of thing where the realization dawned on me in my brain and in my heart at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was just the coolest thing. And then unfortunately I had to like go back out on stage and keep doing my lines. But in my head, I'm like, I'm just reeling and on cloud 9 because I knew that I had just heard audibly with my own ears, to the point where I actually kind of whispered like, what? Thinking my mom is going to be standing there trying to like get my attention or something. And it was definitely, someone trying to call out my name enough times to get my attention. And it was just, it's not the first time I've heard my brother's voice since he's passed away. But it's the first time I've heard his voice at the theater, which is cool. I've only ever heard it in my parents' house shortly after he passed away. I had tons of experiences within the first year of him passing away, but then since then it's been very sporadic. And every so often you just want to like have like, hey, I would like to have a dream with you, or hear your voice, or see, or something, and you don't always get that. So it was great that I had that last night working on this show that's inspired by him. And of course, the holidays are coming up, and the holidays are always really difficult for a lot of people. So it was kind of that nice little nudge into the holidays to be like, you know what? You've got this. You're in the right place. You're doing the right thing. You're on the right track. Go ahead. So,
but other people have seen him, haven't they, at the theatre?
Yes. My favorite story that I heard was from Carl, the gentleman who passed away in 2017. The final show that he was in was the summer musical. And while they were rehearsing, the entire cast was on stage except for his one character, Carl's one character. And so he was sitting out in the audience. And at one point he looked over at the Ghostlight and saw Jed kind of peeking out from behind a curtain. And just smiled at him, and then kind of just like went back behind the curtain. And his friend was retelling this to me. And she was saying that night, Carl said, like, I saw Jed. And it wasn't like, ooh, it was a ghost of Jed. Like, it was flesh and blood. Like, it looked like Jed. So, I mean, he's seen him there. I've seen him also after a performance of All Through the Night that I mentioned previously. The role that Jed always dreamed of playing was the young college kid going home for Christmas Eve. And his goal was to be healthy enough to be able to play it in 2015. Unfortunately, he passed away in April of 2015. So Don decided that I should take on that role in December instead of giving it to some random teenage kid. And opening night, we did curtain call, we took our bows, and as we were leaving, my dad was the first one down the stairs off stage, and I was the next one. And from the corner of my eye, I saw a tall young man walking towards the Ghostlight. And I thought, oh, that's the stage manager. Didn't think anything of it. And as I turned into backstage, into the green room, the stage manager was there to high five everyone. There was no one else backstage. No one else is backstage. It's only the stage manager. Everyone else is out on stage taking the curtain call. So it was one of those things, again, kind of like hearing my brother's voice. Oh, that wasn't my mom's voice. That was his voice. Same thing with this. That wasn't the stage manager. He was much taller. He was skinnier. He had like this little swag walk that Jed had. And I knew in that instance, again, both in my head and my heart, like I saw Jed that night on opening night after I played the role that he was supposed to play. So it's just, he's appeared to people in photographs at the Ghostlight, in EVPs, and in person. And I think it's the sort of thing that the theater was such a huge part of his life that of course there would be a piece of him still there. You know, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about trying to keep this theater going, is that when I go there, I feel like I'm walking into a great big hug from my brother. I feel him everywhere in that building, more than anywhere else. So if that building was to ever shut down or become something other than the Ghostlight Theater, I don't know what I would do. I would just, it would be a devastating blow, which is why, you know, we came up with the Ghost of the Ghostlight Theater, and we're trying to, you know, sell as many copies as we can, just to try to keep them going, because we don't know how long the Ghostlight will have to stay dark, unfortunately.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, because I say I was just feeling a bit emotional then myself, actually, some of that stuff you were saying. So some of it resonates with me too. So, I mean, people get hold of this book. You may think we've given you everything that was in it, but trust me, we've scratched the surface with accounts. There are pages and pages and pages in them, and none of them sound, how to say it, kooky. You know, they were all quite sort of like, well, this is what I thought I saw, and then I double checked, and you know, there's I don't think I've read one about orbs or anything.
No orbs.
You know, all very sort of, well, I was doing this, and then I saw this, and then I thought, oh, it's so and so, and then I realised it wasn't so and so, and yeah, you got to get hold of a copy of the book. Well, this play that you guys are putting on, how can people get to see it if it's coming on virtually?
So we're still kind of working out the hard details of it, but there will be DVDs for sale. And then we're also going to be streaming it possibly on Amazon Prime, but because Amazon Prime takes a decent chunk out of the ticket sales of sorts, I'm recommending that we're going to be putting it up on like a private YouTube channel. And then after people purchase a ticket of sorts, we'll, on the premiere date, we'll send out a nice big email with like a thank you from the cast and crew, with a link to the YouTube channel that you can then sit and watch it. So in a way, it's kind of cool that we can't perform it live on stage this year, because now people from all over the world can watch this production that's in memory of my brother, which I think is really cool.
I'm going to be in tears watching it, even though I never met you. Oh. You do realise that, don't you?
Oh, it means so much.
and don't do the DVD option, because we have different DVDs in the UK. So the YouTube one, and make sure you do share it to my Haunted Histories page when you know what's happening, please. So absolutely. Anyone listening to the podcast can keep up to date with it. Well, is there anything else you want to mention?
Oh gosh, I don't think so. This was so much fun. I loved this. This was great.
You want to come back again one day then?
Always.
Well, so you've got Amanda's books, you've got Amanda's articles online, you've got Amanda's articles in Haunted Magazine, you've got Keep an Eye Out for, and what's the play going to be called again, sorry?
Oh, I didn't even mention it. It's called The Christmas Rose.
The Christmas Rose. Thank you very much. You got The Christmas Rose. You got anything else? I mean, who knows? There might be a new edition of The Ghost of the Ghostlight Theatre as more stuff happens. I mean, might as well keep adding to it, eh?
Absolutely. We're already working on a volume 2, because people are like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you this, and this. And it's like, guys, come on. So we're already working on part 2.
Cool. So keep an eye out for that. And obviously go and have a look at Amanda's Spook Eats page. Go and follow her on all the social media sites. She's on all of them. And let me know if you think Jed was possibly an incredibly beautiful person. I really did have a thing. Every time your photo comes out with this smile, I'm just like, that is an amazing smile. But yes, thank you so much for giving me some of your time tonight.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
I've had a blast, and it's a good job nobody knows what we were talking about before, because they might look at us in a different way. But yes, so that's been the absolutely gorgeous Amanda Woomer-Limpert from Spook Eats, and isn't she amazing? I could listen to her for hours. So on that note, thank you ever so much for listening to Haunted Histories here on Paranormal UK Radio. I'll get my words out. I really haven't been drinking tonight. It's orange squash, I promise, that I've been sipping. But on that note, again, thank you for listening. Have a good evening, sleep tight, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night?